What's up, everybody? We're back for day 2 of our ghost tour through the Haunted Mansion. So, first and foremost, let's take care of the formalities. Much better. So, last time we introduced you to the first ghost you hear/see, but I also wanted today to talk about some characters that appear alongside him when you see the ghost host. Of course, in this case, I'm talking about the various stretching portraits in the stretching room. And I thought a good way to go about this would be to ease you into them, as it were. So as you enter the stretching room, you would be flanked on all sides by 4 portraits on the walls, each at first appearing very mundane and normal, but as the room begins to stretch, the portraits follow suit, and you see that they're much more gruesome in nature than they first appeared. And I'm going to go through them from your left to right to run them all down. Our first portrait appears at first to be a very smug-looking gentleman in a bowler hat, and that's about it. But as the room begins to stretch, you start to see that for some reason he's sitting on top of another guy. And by the end of it, you realize that he and 2 other men are stacked on top of each other as they slowly sink into quicksand. And clearly, our man on top is so smug because, well, he's on top. Next up, we have a portrait of an elderly woman clutching a rose. This one, despite the faint grin on her face, feels a little more somberful almost. But as the room begins to stretch, you start to see why. As she's not just sitting, she's sitting on top of someone's tombstone, specifically George, who is presumed to be her late husband. But as it reaches the bottom, you start to realize maybe his death was not so natural causes. See, once upon a time, this was just an elderly black widow, but with the 2006 refurbishment of the mansion, they tweaked it a little bit to make this and the new renovated version of the bride character later on in the attic, who we will get to, into the same character of Constance Hatchaway. Next up, we have a man that we know by the name of Baron Alexander Nitrikov, who at first appears to be this very dignified man. He's dressed nicely, posing politely, almost like a presidential or mayoral portrait, and he's clutching some kind of document. We don't really know what kind. But as the room begins to stretch, it becomes a little more humorous because, well, he's in his underwear. Although not everything is just that easy, because as we get to the bottom of the portrait, Baron Nitrikov's name is very well earned. Finally, we've come to a ballerina by the name of Sally Slater. At first, Sally here appears to just be balancing and holding a parasol, not really doing much. But as the room stretches, you see she's actually precariously balanced on not the sturdiest looking tightrope. And being a ballerina, maybe this isn't too out of the ordinary, but what does make it out of the ordinary is why she's up there in the first place, and why she may not be able to get down. So running through those 4, they stretch around you as the ghost host reveals that you're now trapped in the room. But the interesting thing is, they are not the only versions of the portraits that we've ever encountered. See, there's 2 exceptions to this, at least in my mind, 2 main exceptions. In California, during the holidays, their version of Haunted Mansion turns into a Nightmare Before Christmas themed ride, during which the portraits are changed to reflect that theming. Also, during that change, the ghost host's body hanging from the ceiling is replaced by a giant face of Jack Skellington. The other exception is at Disneyland Paris, where they have Phantom Manor, which runs on a completely different storyline, and it is a storyline at Phantom Manor, one of a woman tormented by a being called the Phantom, who has driven all of her potential husbands to death. And in their version of the stretching room, this woman, Melanie, and her various suitors are the ones featured in the portraits, and as they stretch, you start to see how those suitors met their grisly ends, presumably due to the actions of the Phantom. The other thing of note is that the portraits and the ghost host are not the only entities within the stretching room. See, some people have said that they can hear these little guys whispering and chuckling to themselves during certain parts of the pre-show. These little gargoyles have become so iconic that they actually have appeared in a number of merchandise. One that I've previously talked about wanting to get my hands on in the form of a tiki mug at Trader Sam's or Trader Sam's Grog Grotto, depending on which coast you're on. But yeah, these guys are so iconic and I think just as important a part of the stretching room scene as the other members of the cast. And I felt like they deserved a shout out. But that's the stretching room so far, and tomorrow we move forward into the house and towards the beginning of the actual ride. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see y'all next time.